Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we're looking at Jesus passing through Samaria. We saw that he went through Judea, worked in Judea, or traveled to Judea yesterday, and was there for a couple months. And now he is moving towards Jerusalem still, and he's going to pass through Samaria to do so. And so this comes from Luke 9, verses 52 through 56. And so we see here in verse 52, it starts, it says, he sent his messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival. Apparently, as he was traveling through, he was going to stay here or spend some time in this village. But the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. We'll talk about why they, because him being traveling to Jerusalem, why they rejected that. And when James and John saw this, so this is, pay attention to this, they said to Jesus, Lord, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up? Some manuscripts say as Elijah did, but their first reaction is let's just destroy this whole town and kill everyone in it. But Jesus turned and rebuked them, and so they went on to another villages. And some manuscripts have an expanded version of this verse, and we'll look at it. So we have basically, in summary, this situation where Jesus and his disciples and his apostles are traveling. They're going to stop in a Samaritan village. So they sent people ahead, which this would have been common this time, to prepare for their arrival, right? There would have been probably a larger group of people, not, it wasn't like it was four people, hey, we need somewhere to stay. But they figured, they learned who he was and where he was going. And they're like, oh, we don't want you here. And so, so if we go back to the notes here and some of the thoughts, traveling to Jerusalem for worship implied the rejection of their rituals, which was on Mount Gerizim, I think is how you say it, but I don't quote me on that. And they saw it as rejection or contempt of the Samaritan worship because that's where they worshiped. The Samaritans worshiped on that mountain. We kind of went over this when we looked at the woman at the well, and so it was a rejection of their style of worship. They knew he was going to Jerusalem to worship, so they were like, you're not welcome here. And so this was a excuse me, this was a strong point of contention between the Jews and the Samaritans. And so, when they didn't welcome Jesus because of this, James and John, they didn't want to stop at shaking the dust off their feet like Jesus had instructed them to in Luke 9, verse 5, right? They wanted to retaliate. They wanted to call down fire from heaven on the people as Elijah had done in 2 Kings 1 and, and destroy them. And so you got to look at this. It's human nature, right? Someone rejects you, someone hurts you. What do you want to do? You want to hurt them back, right? But you want to hurt them back tenfold. And this was James and John's response. It's like, hey, Jesus, these people rejected you. You need to destroy the entire village with fire. Now, what good would that have done? And so we have to remember that. It's like when someone hurts you, right? What does Jesus say to do? Turn the other cheek, right? Someone insults you, turn the other cheek. That's hard to do, right? Because we don't want to turn the other cheek. We want to knock them out. And so we've got to be careful not to let our human nature uh, get us caught up in that. And so the interesting thing here to note, which is interesting, is several years later, right? John, the Apostle John, is going to journey through Samaria with Peter this time, but this time preaching the gospel to Samaritan villages. So I wonder, what are the chances that John and Peter ended up preaching to this Samaritan village that at one point John wanted to destroy? And it's an interesting thing to see John's attitude here, how much it has changed, like from what we read about in Luke and some of the Gospels, right? How he was versus how he becomes, right? When you read his letter, you read John, right? For some reason John didn't record this in in his, but right, you read John and you read the first, second, and third John, and he's known as the apostle of love, right? Because of how much he talks about love. And so it's interesting to see how much Jesus was changed, and the difference in him from this time until the resurrection, how much he changes after the fact. And so it is really, you see this you see this transformation that he had with through Jesus and through the Holy Spirit. And it's a wonderful transformation and a wonderful contrast to see. And that should be us, right? Before Jesus, right? Before we have Jesus, that would be our attitude, right? We're going to destroy someone. Someone insulted me, we're going to destroy them. But after we have a relationship with Jesus, after we have the Holy Spirit, then our the way we are and the way we behave towards people who reject us and insult us should be completely different. It should be Christ-like. And so, you know, we have to remember, and here's the thing we have to remember, right? That judgment belongs to God. It's not up for us up to decide, right? Because we would get it wrong really bad all the time. And we must not expect him to use his power to carry out our personal vendetta. Someone insults us, you don't go to God praying for them to get hurt. Don't, for him to destroy them or for him to hurt them that's not what God does, right? God's just. God will judge correctly, and he'll make sure things in the end are taken care of. But you have that kind of attitude, and you just think about it. You have that kind of attitude with with towards that. Should it apply to yourself, right? Should the same thing happen to you? Should he treat you the same way? Because how many times have you hurt someone, or maybe you done someone wrong, right? And so we've got to be very careful with this kind of stuff. And so then the last little bit there, um, kind of expands on 55, right? In the New Living Translation, it says, "But Jesus turned and rebuked them." And some manuscripts have an expanded version, right? Conclusion to verse 55 and an additional sentence in verse 56. And it says this: "You do not realize what your hearts are like, for the Son of Man has not come to destroy people's lives, but to save them." Now, more than likely, it's taken out of the New Living Translation and some of the newer versions, because the older manuscripts, right, the oldest manuscripts probably doesn't have that. We probably see it in newer manuscripts, and so a lot of the newer versions, if it wasn't in the originals, they tend to take it out. Now, I don't see anything wrong with that, because I think that lines up perfectly biblically, and so it's good that it's noted in there that this was in some manuscripts, and it fits, right? That we don't realize what our hearts are like, and in this case they didn't either. And the Son of Man has not come to destroy, but to save lives. And so, that is a very good thing. And so they went to another village. They just went on to another village. And so we need to remember this. We need the concept of this whole story is, right, people are going to reject us because of Christ, right? They are. And we cannot have an attitude of revenge, right? People are going to hurt us, and we can't have an attitude of revenge. People are going to do things to us that should not be done. They're going to attack us. That's part of life, especially as a Christian. Jesus tells us this is going to happen to you, and we are to respond in love. We're not to respond in hate. We're not to respond in vengeance. We're not to respond in asking God to bring fire down and destroy the entire village. Trust me, it's tempting, right? I'm sure we've all thought it. And it's like you say, hey, God, can you not just have lightning strike that guy's house or that girl's house and burn it to the ground, right? That's human nature. When someone hurts us, that's human nature. But we've got to remember as Christians that we behave like Christ did. We have his Spirit, right? We have the Holy Spirit, and so we are to behave and show the fruit of that Spirit, which is things like love and kindness. And so we need to remember that vengeance is not ours. God's going to judge in the end. Let him take care of those things, and we move forward, continuing to do the work of God and showing Christ through us, because I'm telling you, that will make a bigger difference. Getting revenge, people expect that, right? But if someone hurts you and you respond in kindness and forgiveness and love and mercy, that's gonna have an impact on them, and they're going to see Jesus through that, whether they admit it or not or show it or not. It's going to have an impact on them. So let's remember that and make sure that we commit to doing that. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching the videos. If it's helpful, please share them with others you think it would be helpful for. If you think someone needs it, send it to them. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do so. Again, we're going to continue to produce these daily videos right now, and then we're going to get into some deeper topics and some harder topics as we get further on. But just for now, we're just going to kind of stick to the daily routine, studying through the Bible, looking at the every day of life, Christ, or the events of Christ's life. And as always, I appreciate everyone for watching.